Here we are, the key issue, the definitive podcast. Isaac Elliott-Fisher, we made it all the way to, is this episode 5?
5. We are here at episode 5, and I'm super pumped for this one, Rand.
We don't want to give too many things away. The hand gestures tell the story tonight.
Oh, that's right.
The hand gestures.
I was doing Ultraman. I was going to do Ultraman.
You, and I don't know if you did or not.
I don't know. I actually did. Oh, man. Now I don't know if I did it right.
It doesn't matter. The things that we're going to do tonight are going to be right. My name is Randall.
My name is Isaac Elliott-Fisher.
We are from Definitive Film. You may know us from our movies, but you also may know that we are collectors of comic books and other things. And tonight, we're bridging the gap between some very collectible things that are difficult to get, some very collectible things that you can get, and some things that a lot of younger collectors maybe don't tune into quite the same way.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, those of us who love fantasy art and fantasy illustration, like most of us know Frank Frazetta. I mean, he's like the god of fantasy illustration, fantasy art. But a lot of us know Frank primarily as a oil painting fantasy illustrator, and you know, for his books like Conan the Barbarian covers and stuff like that. That was kind of what he was most known for.
Yeah.
But kind of prior to that, you know, going back into his history, it's sort of nice to get into some of the comic book stuff, a little bit of the magazine stuff that he was known for at the very beginning, because he did a good chunk of his early career in comics and newspaper comics, specifically newspaper comic strips.
The strips, yeah. The thing that he's known for, let's get that overhead up here, Nick, if you could for a minute. This is something you won't find at our friends Covrprice, Covrprice.com, our friends at Covrprice. They have us hammered out with comic books and magazines, but these are how a lot of people know Frazetta, particularly the Conans, but he did the Edgar Rice Burroughs books that came out on Ace and those Lancers, of course. I just have a little selection here. He's famous for these paintings, and the painting and the collecting of the paintings is sort of like the story with Frazetta. But if you go back far enough, you find he got his start in the strips. And Isaac, let's go right all the way back.
Well, we go all the way back. I mean, he's born 1928 in Brooklyn. Only son, 3 sisters, in February 28. And his only formal, I mean, like, the guy was basically born with an innate ability to produce art. I mean, his earliest...
It seems the case, doesn't it?
Yeah, some of his earliest drawings, I mean, it's hard to tell whether or not they really were at a specific, like, age, but the legend is that some of the drawings that are out there he did when he was like 3 years old, and he's got like airplanes in perspective with like the second airplane wing behind the airplane. You're like, how do you do that at 3? I don't think my kid could draw something like that at 3. I couldn't. But his only formal art education in his entire life, he was started when he's 8 years old. And I've got it written down here, the Brooklyn Academy of Fine Arts with the teacher Michael Falanga.
Isn't that Michelle?
You know what? Sorry, you're right. Michelle Falanga.
Michelle?
And Micheal. And he only did that from the ages of 8 to 12 because his teacher died. And that's the only formal education he ever had in terms of art. He did then subsequently go on to like mentor under people at age 16, which is where we come right into comic books right away, because he starts working with John. We were doing this earlier, John Junta. And he's like 16 years old. And at the time, he was doing this little comic book character called the Snowman. And John was like, his mentor was like, you know what? This snowman character you've got going on is kind of cool. So why don't we bring it into the Bernard Bailey publishing that he's working with? And basically his mentor inks his comic for him. And so his first ever official paid publication of comic book art, he's only 16 years old. It's right here in Tally Ho Comics. Yeah, bring that up there, Nick, on my screen. We got Tally Ho Comics in 1944. December of 1944.
Now, the thing about that, it's a one page, is it not?
I'm not sure, but it's the cover. It's the cover story.
I think it is a one pager, but there it is in the bottom left. That's the character, isn't it?
All of it. It's this one. All these 3. I'm not sure if this character plays into the story, but these 3 panels here, this section, that's the character right there.
The story is a bit blurry. I don't remember hearing this. And by the way, we know a little bit about Frazetta because of our Conan documentary.
That's right.
And we're lucky enough to spend some time at a Frazetta museum in Stroudsburg with Frank Jr. And we were lucky enough to have a conversation with Sarah Frazetta from the Frazetta Girls and talk about their father and grandfather. and got some perspective on some of his work at this time. And there are a couple things that are hard to source. Did he do the whole thing? Was he, inking or penciling in combination? He did some stuff with Al Cap, did he not at that time?
Well, no, Al Cap was later than that. That's when he starts ghosting for Al Cap after some of this era.
This is 44.
Yeah, this is when he's like a
Tally-ho.
16-year-old boy. So, I mean, like a lot of this is legend. Like with Frank, there's a lot of weird legendary, like, did this happen like this? Did it happen like that? And I mean, obviously for a first publication work at age 16, this is like technically speaking kind of the first ever Frazetta. And according to Covrprice, this is a really attainable key issue for what it is, in my opinion, considering how much some of his paintings go for. You're looking at like $250, $300. I mean, low grade. I mean, it's really hard to find anything of any substantial grade of something like this, but a 4.55, that's pretty awesome to say you could potentially land the very, very first published Frank Frazetta for a few $100.
And again, this is one of those ones, no one's 100% sure what he did and, to what degree. And it's difficult back in those days. Another one of his mentors was Roy Krenkel, who is, very well regarded for his covers. And we do have a comic panel that Roy Krenkel did. We'll show that later. But when you're working with people like that, young as he is, and he's from the city, he really has to generate a lot of his art has to come from inside himself, right? He was probably absorbing a lot of material, but he was early enough in comics that, he's looking at people who are known for creating comics. Like he's so early in, comics have been around maybe in the way that we think of them for 8 or 9 years when he gets his start. So,
and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Rand, but I think Krenkel was an editor at one of the comic companies. I think when he gets working for A1 Comics, he was doing the Ghost Rider covers, which are phenomenal.
You're talking about Krenkel's covers?
No, Frazetta's.
Frazetta's covers,
because I think that's where he kind of meets Krenkel. I think, but I might be incorrect on that.
Well,
don't quote me on
we'll do another talk on Krenkel another day.
That's right.
I'm not read up on him. I have the one page that we want to discuss.
Right.
But we should jump into Treasure Comics number 7. Because
7.
Yeah, it's his first ever solo work.
Which is the Thunder?
No.
I
have.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But I have the actual pages here, so we can cut to those and talk about. There's something particularly resonant about that. I think this Treasure Comics 7 is a really good buy right now. Now look at this, Isaac. This is page 1.
Yeah.
It's a 4-page story. Give us 2, Nick, and then 3. Right? It's just very typical. 3, and then 4.
Yeah, first ever solo work.
And look at this. This is the last panel.
Yeah.
Is this relevant now or what?
No joke.
Can you read that?
I can't read it from my angle here.
And the dream of William Penn is not dead, for the hope of America lies in those who believe in brotherhood in a nation where all men can live and work happily without regard to race, creed, or color. And then he drew this. When I saw this, I couldn't believe it. I thought, okay, this is from 1946.
Yeah.
After World War II, you have a very young Frank Frazetta doing this very resonant today panel, particularly that last panel. And Nick, do we have also the next one? There's another treasure page there to pull up, I think. The one page, back one, sorry. Maybe we don't have that one. No, we don't have it. But he also did a 4-panel one-pager in that same edition. So if you buy Treasure 7, what do you get it for these days? Do you know?
I'll bring that up because actually it's funny. I did not have that one as ready.
Oh, you didn't have Treasure 7?
I had it up and I switched my computers. My apologies. Treasure. Okay. So give me a moment.
I'll give you a moment. Here's why I like it. I like the messaging in it. Mm-hmm. I like that it looks a little bit like the classic comics of that time period. It has this sort of old-fashioned style, but it's very liney, like a Prince Valiant or something like that. Like it has that very much of its time feel. And I believe the Treasure comics were collected together to be sort of like strip comics bundled together. Am I not mistaken there? But that's what the whole point of Treasure was.
Yeah, I think so. Here we go. Number 7. I'm sorry. Pardon I had this totally ready to go, and then I lost it. Here we go. Okay, so up on my screen. Yeah, so I do remember this cover. It's kind of a unique cover. Mm-hmm. And they're fantastic. All the different covers in Treasure. Actually, they're very I don't know, like they got some, very circusy covers. They got this is a wild fantasy kind of
I don't.
cover.
Yeah, the cover's not him.
No, it's definitely not him.
Yeah,
but
sure.
but like just in terms of the flavor of the time,
Very trippy.
Yeah, it's very trippy stuff. And so,
What's it go for?
You're talking $89 is the average raw value.
So that's a buy.
Yeah, it doesn't have a sales data on this specific one. So it's just $90.
If you see it anywhere, you snap that up.
Oh, that's the first solo work right there. That's a pretty key issue, 1946.
But you did throw up that Ghost Rider.
That's right. That was A1.
And that's A131. That's from January 1951. That's just a Frank Frazetta cover. I believe the interior.
Yeah, this was just that's the thing is that really in comic books, primarily what we're talking about in many cases is just the covers. I pulled this one up because it's one of my favorites.
It's so good.
Yeah, and if you get into the line work specifically with so many of these covers, if you pull out the color, the line work is phenomenal. Now, unfortunately, there's no sales data on this specific book, but he at the time wanted to really be a storyteller for sure, but he was his work was so polished and refined. Obviously, he's being thrown into covers right away. And not doing a lot of interior work until he was doing strip work.
It's also a time, by the way, where the art was considered sort of throwaway, like being hammered by an inker or a colorist was not abnormal back then.
That's
for
right.
a good penciler. And this is also not the Ghost Rider that everybody thinks of. Obviously, this is Cowboy Ghost Rider.
Yep.
Not the Ghost Rider that we see in Marvel many years later, early 70s, I guess, Johnny Storm. Let's jump to the next A1 because you're a fan of Thunder and you want to talk about how the colorists seem to bash some of that line work.
Well, I don't know too much about how it looks on the interior because I'm pretty sure that the interior is still printed black and white. But this is talk about, unfortunately, counter to the that little solar work you showed before. This is not a very PC cover. We're definitely in a time and place when certain imagery was accepted where it's no longer for good reason. And obviously Tarzan was a huge thing and there was a lot of rip-off Tarzan content or copycat Tarzan content. As far as I understand it, what he was trying to do, and go to my overhead camera here, Nick, is as I understand it, he was trying to take this Thunder character. And here's a nice reprint of the line art for that cover. And it's maybe hard to see on this camera, but you can start to see that incredibly fine hatching work that he does, which he's very known for. But this is a very interesting book because he did the whole story. So again, not necessarily, I can't say that it's for sure or for certain, but it seems to be the only published comic book that he did cover to cover. The penciling, the inking.
Or so we believe.
So we believe. So the idea with this specific Tarzan lookalike is that he had him obviously battling out with some big monsters and dinosaurs. I love this frame right here. It's that is like such a Frazetta look that something shows up a lot later that looks like that. And as I understand it, this is where I believe that Krinkle was an editor because I think he was being told, don't have this Tarzan character battling these fantastical beasts. Let's bring him back to a more traditional African jungle. So by the end of this first issue of this specific character, they have him going back to a normal jungle, and then the rest of the issues were supposed to be just that. And then I think something happened. Again, legend goes that the rights get sold to I think Universal or somebody. I don't know if it's Universal, but one of the movie houses in Hollywood. And then he didn't get any money for that, so he moved on.
It's a tough time for an artist or a writer in comics. That early 50s,
1952, January 52.
So it's disposable. It's not considered important, and it's all to the publisher. You are a work for hire, so in you go and do your work. That one, you said there's no data on.
There's no data on this, but what I did do is I pulled up just real quick on eBay, and there's slabbed books that are 3 or a 6, and they're like a 3 is 1,300. A 6 on eBay is 2,300. An ungraded or unslabbed 2.0 is 927. So yeah, it's not a cheap book.
No.
But it's an important book in his history because it's maybe the only comic that he did front to back.
Yeah, and it's one that if you find it in any shape, you need it. And you won't find it. It's not easy to find.
No,
but they're
so
out
many
there
things.
somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk very quickly about the famous Funnies in a row.
Absolutely.
So I'll just give you some oversight, and then I know you specifically want to talk about 213, but it's the first comic book sold on newsstands. Think about that. So this is a title that's a bundled together again. It's like taking the funny pages out of the newspapers, bundling them together, thus famous Funnies. And that collection started all kinds of things that we know. I have noted here Joe Palooka, Buck Rogers. Lance Kirby got his start there. You might know Lance Kirby as Jack Kirby, and Al Williamson. So two really great artists, aside from Frank Frazetta, got their start in Famous Funnies. Famous Funnies, a great way for young creators to get their work out there into the world. And look at that cover. That's 213 there.
But before we get to 213, come over to my Covrprice here, Nick. Because
you want to do the Buck Rogers?
Well, not yet. I want to sort of give some context to what you're saying, because basically this is the kind of thing you're looking at. Like, you're looking at Famous Funnies, much like you're saying. They are comic strips out of the newspaper. And on this page, actually, I'll go up to the top. This page particularly, I brought up this one because this is a Buck Rogers cover that wasn't done by him.
No.
So it's done prior to him coming in. So this is what people are used to seeing when it comes to Buck Rogers. They're like, this is comic books. This is what it's supposed to look like. And then this guy comes along and goes, no, it's going to look like this.
Okay, I want to say what I think when I see the difference. For me, it was like the old style looks like a play.
Yeah.
And his style looks like it's way more blown out. Now, I don't want to say like a movie, but it's much more imaginative, much more popped.
That's right.
Everything is exploded for maximum effect.
Yeah, come back to that one there, Nick. This is a phenomenal one. And again, if you go to my overhead camera, you'll see these books look great, but when you see just the line art on its own, it's absolutely phenomenal. Like I'm not sure if you can if the camera can even appreciate.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's so fine, so refined. Like, if I can get close enough that it will focus, look at the detail in the ape spot, or the ape. I don't know what, he's an underwater ape.
You know the underwater apes.
Yeah, like, just this is where he's really starting to come into his own. What he's known for in that amazing pinnacle of action, composition, the use of black and white shapes to set and frame things. It's just phenomenal. Those covers.
You also see his layouts. Like his initial design and how much impact there is there. But listen, since we're early 50s, it's time for what? Give me the overhead.
Wait a minute, though. Come back to Buck Rogers. This is so specific. What do you think of
I know
when you see that?
Sorry, we didn't talk about
this.
Come
on. Like, what is that?
I think of a trash compactor.
Yeah, maybe the ship of some the doors in a very famous Falcony type ship and a furry co-pilot.
I think of a star. I think of a war.
Yeah, these type of things. Like, come on. Like, if this isn't the predecessor to the Millennium Falcon.
I think the way to say it is more like, did George Lucas see this? Maybe. But was it part of the atmosphere that George Lucas grew up in? Probably.
Yeah, I would almost... I'm sure there's some quote somewhere of George saying, "Oh no, he saw this."
Well, George Lucas was a fan, known to be true.
We know that.
Yeah.
But now we can go to the weird science.
Let's look at
the 50s.
It. So now we have the overhead. Here we go. Yeah. So this is Isaac's and this is mine. Isaac and I had different choices that we made. I will admit I lucked into this. Now, do you want to talk about why you bought it?
Well, I mean, this specific issue is oftentimes credited as one of the best or greatest comic art cover pieces in history. And that actually, the amazing thing is that the month that book was printed was my father's birth month.
And I think he's in here somewhere.
He's in there. He's somewhere there. And so, as one of the best comic pieces in history, of course you want to have that. It's one of Frank's best comic covers, obviously.
Yeah, and you want it in any shape. The point is.
So that's to get to the point is the fact that I made the choice of, okay, I'll buy it in any shape, and I found it online, and it's not out of the plastic there, but like the cover is literally removed.
I have pulled it out.
Somebody has like used ballpoint pen to half shade the title for some reason. That was still $100,
and
so
it's
rough.
It's rough. I got this one at a show, and the show was over. So there's a small bit of color touch. There's a little bit of action on the spine. Somebody was trying to clean up the spine, but the color on the cover was so beautiful. For a 3.5, I think I paid $200 for this, and around $200.
A lucky get.
It's a good get.
Yeah. I mean,
you need this one if you're in our line of work.
Yeah.
And we should point out, we've spent some time looking at these pieces up close in different museums and different places where we've been. We've been very lucky. You sat at Frank's easel and where he worked, so you've been right up close to this. Can you point out some of the things about this that make, like, when you get up close to things like this? Can you give us an overhead there for a second again there, Nick?
Yeah.
Look at Isaac.
Oh, there you go. That's a great piece.
We get up close to these things.
Yeah. So this, unfortunately, obviously that's not the real one. The real one would be bonkers. But that particular print is fantastic find because the story goes is that Frank, after his stroke late in life, he was teaching himself to paint with his left hand again. Again, for the first time.
And sign.
That's the thing, for the left hand.
Practicing
so this was a print of this particular piece, and he was basically coloring it in as a practice or for fun to see what it would look like in hand colored. That piece in particular, the closer you get, I think actually to give an example of how important that piece is or how powerful it is, the artist William Stout that we know as well through other documentaries, he did a spoof cover for something where he replaced Buck Rogers with like a moose character. And I think he tried to replicate that piece kind of brushstroke for brushstroke. And he says basically it upped his game exponentially just by simply
breaking it down.
Because when you break down the layout, the how the contrast and the black shapes move through the piece. I think I have it. I had it here. Now I've lost my bookmark. And obviously the action and the motion of the characters. The action and the motion of the characters. It's
very detailed. It's very intricate in terms of its action as you get close to it. Yeah, that's a nice reproduction.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just that way that you can take absolutely any position of all of the characters, and there's 2, 4, 6 different characters in this one piece, and every limb and every finger, every weapon, every arc of everything leads you back and around in circles. And it's a beautiful example of how he wouldn't just use straight lines to tie things together. It's arcing, bringing you around, the eye around to all these different points of focus, and really obviously selling. Now, this is a piece where he did change Buck Rogers' helmet, I think, at one point. And even the way that the black shading comes up and through here, it's just the hair on the Neanderthal being knocked off. I mean, it's just amazing.
Was famous for making adjustments to stuff changing radically.
After the fact.
I just want to point out, I have another thing here. Can you give us an overhead again, Nick? This is the other comic that's often described as one of the greatest covers of all time. This is a Ditko's, The Amazing Spider-Man 33. We'll put them side by side. I get why people say that. I mean, the Ditko is very beautiful. I love the color. It really pops. This was, I believe, an article in Screen Rant. So everyone's got their own opinions, but I happen to have this Amazing Spider-Man. I thought it's nice to see them side by side and to see the color work and the details. If you're a collector, Isaac, and you want to pick up weird science fantasy, I mean, we don't have to check. We'll talk about Amazing Spider-Man another time. I got this for a song where I wouldn't have bought it, but this, it's hundreds of dollars. What is this going for?
So at the lowest graded recorded on Covrprice is a 2, and that's $230 to $200. Well, yeah, $230.
Right.
Yeah, 3, $315. Yeah, so it just goes up and up. You know, in the 4.5, you're already in the $500 ish. The highest rated on here recorded is as a 7, which was recorded at $1,500. Which is, you know, you can't find this in any shape.
No, it's tough to see. It's tough to see it.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's worth it. I mean, that's just when you really look at it, it's a very, very important piece of art history, I think.
Let's jump to Blazing Combat. This is from the year I was born, 65.
Yeah, Blazing Combat. What a great example of his. This is we're definitely. Oh no! Now here's the thing. We're jumping into his paintings,
Yeah,
which is
a jump.
further on.
This is a jump.
And we're gonna go back a year after this. But we were talking about this before. If you go to the very last 3 pages of that book,
I know.
You can see the 4 paintings he did. And this was like obviously war comics were sensationalized.
Yeah, but this magazine is not.
It's dark.
Yeah, it is not the same vibe.
Yeah.
Like the paintings are intense, obviously.
Yeah.
But this third piece, if I'm not mistaken, is from the Vietnamese point of view. Like this is basically the horrors of war in a time when people were still gung-ho for Vietnam. It's a very, I would call it a progressive, almost surprisingly progressive series of.
And you can feel that in the covers, like that one where the soldier here, I'll bring it up on Covrprice, is that one where the soldier's like holding that one. You can, like, as much as it is, there's heroicness to it. You feel the pain.
Oh, it's miserable.
Of those guys. Like, it is miserable.
Yeah, it's
like,
miserable.
Absolutely. It's gut wrenching. And I mean, in the one where it's sort of like a Nazi, that one, it's almost revolting. Even the feel, and it's because there's a slight I hesitate to use the word cartoonishness, but it's, you know, in the gesture, but it still doesn't feel sensational to me.
Well, no, look at, I mean,
yeah, it's
horrific.
horrific.
It's very Cost of War. The last one of that 4 run, this one's a little more cartoony.
That's
the
right.
tank one.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it almost is like he got notes.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, you know what?
But the death on top of the tank, still to me, I feel the visceral realness of but that's classic for Frazetta. He pushes the human motion to the extreme, but just on the edge of it, so that it feels it feels more real, even though it's slightly less real. It's like giving Conan's, you know, 5 sets of abs instead of, you know, it's pushing that extreme just a little bit beyond reality, and it pulls you right in.
You tell me, are those in Covrprice, or did
they
we
are?
find
They are, and they're actually in Covrprice both as the original Warren publications.
Oh, really?
And as the reprints as comics, because they did subsequently come in a different size. This one, the July printing 1965 issue 1, raw comic is $275. It's an attainable highest known raw comic value at $608. So they're not cheap, but they are phenomenal covers. And as you say, a different look at war comics.
Totally. And listen to who's in it. John Severin, Wally Wood, Russ Heath, Alex Toth, Al Williamson. These are considered
who's who.
and the best war comics ever made. So you go out to buy these, you're going to pay quite a bit of money. Joe Orlando, by the way.
Yeah.
Archie Goodwin was the story.
Exactly. For the interior artists alone.
Really good.
Really good. So to jump back a year, in October 64, there's a Mad Magazine sitting in front of you.
I know why we want to talk about this.
Yeah, this is a funny one.
Let's get the cover.
Yeah.
And because you're going to say, oh, yeah, that's not a Frazetta. No. And if you go through the whole thing, you don't see a lot of Frazetta. Yeah. But as you are done.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? There's a Ringo Starr.
And I will say this.
Blech.
He couldn't have captured Ringo any more hilariously. It is somehow so perfect, isn't it?
Yes. And this is the beginning or a good representation of Frank doing this cartoony, really fun, really on the nose, like just perfect. And the idea or the legend here, again, there's a lot of legends in this guy's story, is that I think it was United Artists see this back cover fake ad, and they're like, whoa, this guy should do caricature movie posters. So I think it was What's New Pussycat, I think was the first one he did. And it
Yeah.
kind of, the story goes again that he was doing this comic book stuff. At this time, I think he was ghosting for Al Capo and Lil Abner and, basically making a modest, probably rather modest career in Brooklyn at the time. I think maybe he had done sort of his cartoony animal comics, and I think that he was almost poached by Disney, but he didn't want to go out west. And so United Artists sees that back cover spoof ad with Ringo Starr on Mad, and they're like, whoa, we should get this guy to do movie posters. And then in one job, he's making as much as he made in an entire year of doing comics, doing just one poster. So he's like, well, okay, he did a series of movie posters. But those ones, most of those movie posters in the 60s are that classic 60s cartoonish character, big head characterized versions. He did do a handful of movie posters in the more Frazetta painting style that we know. A little later with Mad Max, the first Mad Max film was his poster. I'm gonna blank on the one with the bus on the front.
You're talking about the Gauntlet?
The Gauntlet. That's right.
It's amazing. Clint Eastwood.
It's an amazing Clint Eastwood. Yeah, that's right. Clint Eastwood cover. And I think that Clint maybe even bought that. There's a picture of Clint with him in that painting. So yeah, he did a handful of other movie posters that were a lot more classic Frazetta as we know it. But this is that kind of jokey, almost watercolor. And then I think he was doing like some of the interior comics for like Playboy magazine at this time, but also had that kind of
they had that
spoofy
vibe. But it was, I don't know who invented that style. It certainly wasn't him, but if you see that Ringo, you immediately know what that
exactly.
is. It's a mad, mad world and all those.
It's of that time.
Yeah, those crazy posters.
And now everybody's got What's New Pussycat stuck in their head.
What is that going for? Like,
that issue of Matt, you see, this is the thing. What an entertainment. This is such a great piece. I grabbed it for pretty cheap on eBay.
Because yours is in good shape too.
Yeah, raw comic, $3.50. Like literally $3.50. Like $6. Like it's the highest known value, $11.50. Like
that's a steal.
It's a steal. It's a fabulous key issue because it's just October issue number 90 of 1964. Mad Magazine with it's a funny Alfred E. Newman cover. It's actually a pretty nice one. And boom, on the back, you've got this huge bonus.
Wow.
Frazetta history.
And as I say, that's in really nice shape.
That was a good find. I don't remember exactly what I got it for, but it was probably around that $10, $12.
Good for you. And let's talk Vampirella.
Ooh, Warren and this is a classic moment of me not paying attention to what I was buying.
I already know what happened here. I'm looking at saying, wow, this is an amazing
It's
shade.
amazing for $25. What a steal.
If you wanted to see down here, it says commemorative edition.
Well, it was very fine print and it was in the middle of a show and whoops.
This happens, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It's a feeling that we all know, a version of it, especially these days when there are so many like commemorative ripoffs, whatever you want to word it.
Well, and to be fair, that commemorative issue, that one in front of you that was printed in, I think, January 2001 here on Covrprice is listed at raw comic value of $55.
Well, it's time for me to shut up then.
Yeah, so $25 wasn't that bad.
Now, you and I have, we share a particular feeling about this Vampirella.
Yeah, I would not say that this is my favorite Frazetta piece.
My favorite in the Vampirella run would be 7, 11, and 31. Now, can you picture those?
Yep. Well, I can because I can see them right here online.
Oh, you have them?
Well, they're online right here.
Go to, let's see that.
Yeah.
Look at 7.
7, phenomenal.
Come on.
Actually, my favorite of the Frazetta was my favorite is for sure number 11.
11 is beautiful.
There we're getting into a lot more interesting looking dynamic layout.
Oh, it's
in
beautiful.
The cover. Yeah. But that first one, for some reason, it's not my favorite. There's number 11.
I can tell you what I don't like about it.
Look at this one. This is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, what a great piece. Yeah, and these are relatively attainable at $50
compared to the number 1, right? Like, what's the actual number 1 worth?
Number 1. Let's see how fast my internet goes now. Zooming back and forth. Raw comic estimated value at $400.
To me, that's not the best. I mean, here's the thing. If you give me the overhead again, Nick, we'll look at her face. She's got that Frazetta girl face, right? She looks like they look.
But it's the posture of the legs.
Posture's strange.
It's almost like her left leg is like too short.
It's or twisted, the way the quad is twisted or something.
But here's the thing, 9.6 of that record sale, $9,000.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, Vampirella, very popular character for collectors. But if you can, get 7-Eleven and 31.
Attainable comics.
Way better deals. Just a quick look at 31 before we jump over and take a
quick look
at
with the internet doing what it's doing. I will try my best.
See if it works.
Yeah, I'll jump over to page 2 here. It's it actually, to be honest, I've seen, many of these Warren covers this is a very specific reason why I love this one too.
31?
Luna. Because they made a movie of this in Italy.
But what's nice about that is that anytime you can get a Frazetta cat.
Yes, Frazetta, women with cats.
Yeah, you've got something that you want to collect.
Yeah, and this is raw comic value of $18.
And that's a grab.
Yeah, highest grade, typical sale, $9.6, $500.
People listening to this might say, well, if you guys love them and they're good deals, why don't you have them? It's because you can't find them.
That's right. Yeah, you go digging places. I think Beguiling in Toronto was a great, for us Canadians, that was a great place to find a lot of this rare stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's very easy to go in there and spend hundreds of dollars, even on low grade typical buys, because 10, 12, 13, 15, 20. And I'm just going like, Frazetta, oh crap, I've got a $300 stack. Don't tell my wife. But yeah, talk about a classic cover, number 31 there with the cats. I mean,
so good.
And yeah, so as soon as you get off of a number 1 of a series like Vampirella, it's a lot more attainable than $9,000.
And you're making an informed buying choice. You're not just buying something like, what do I get? Pick it up here or there. You're getting, I know it's a Frazetta cat, and that's awesome. Those are always good. I think one of his early drawings, was it not a cat? Did we not see that in the museum?
I think the earliest ones we saw was an airplane and like a bowl of fruit.
I'm going to remember a cat. We'll talk about this off air.
They're a cat.
Listen, we could insert a little tour of that museum. We have that. We should do that later this week.
We should try that.
But we have another surprise coming later this week, which we'll talk about towards the end. It's time to talk about Eerie.
Creepy and Eerie.
Let's do Eerie first.
Eerie first. I'll bring up my Eerie overall page. Because, I mean, this is a great... Now, Rand, do you know why Eerie starts at issue 2?
Well, I do, but would you like to tell people why?
No, you go ahead. I actually am asking.
Look, you can find Eerie 1.
Is there an Eerie 1?
There's a black and white cover.
It's not in this listing though. This starts number 2.
This starts at 2 because Eerie 1, it looks like it's from another set. It doesn't look like a Warren, it's not a Warren Publishing. You look up Eerie 1, I'll just hit it really quick here. You'll see an old black and white, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the first 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, those are all Frazettas. And number 23 is probably one of my favorite Frazettas of all time. So let me bring that up briefly. And to be absolutely honest with you, I'm not exactly sure why the prices on these specific Eerie books are jumping up and down so dramatically, other than maybe they are because of the Frazetta covers.
It's Frazetta covers. It's how hard they are to get. Here's why the first one is missing. I'm remembering now that it was a great big weird ash can. It wasn't an actual release. It was sort of like a soft release.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. And this is where things get kind of confusing because
100%
Eerie and Creepy and the other, well, they started like mixing and matching which the covers were kind of, this one's on Creepy and on Eerie. This cover gets reused over here, or Vampirella cover gets used on a Creepy or an Eerie. As it's all, they're just repurposing the same art. Now, obviously, a famous piece here. Bring this one up on Covrprice there, Nick. Is the I'm going to say the wrong thing. It's the Egyptian Queen. Yeah, it's the Egyptian Queen.
Egyptian Queen.
Yeah, this is slightly better. Look at my overhead. This has got a nice reproduction right on the cover of one of the old Frazetta. This is the Frazetta 1 painting book, and I mean, I think this one sold for record number back in the day, but. What an amazing piece. And they specifically, this is actually one of those funny scenarios where not a Conan painting, but they specifically used that scene in the John Milius Conan movie because of Frazetta's tie to Conan. And you can there is like that, almost that exact frame is in the Milius film with the cat on the floor and a woman, not exactly Egyptian queen, against a pillar. What a phenomenal cover. And that one is a particularly higher valued book in Warren's world at Raw Comic of that $60.
We happened to be at Comic-Con that year that went up. Was it 2015?
No, I think you're thinking of the that was a different one. That was Meg Rice Burroughs' book.
At the not at the
Yeah, I think it was an Earth Core book. I think it was. Yeah, that one was like 3 million, wasn't it?
Well, I think the Egyptian Queen went for 5 million, 5.4 if I remember correctly. I don't remember the year now. I'm
We should probably look that up.
2 years up. I think it went for 5.4.
I'll look it up. Will you go on to the next one?
I want to. The thing about Warren Publishing is all these magazines look vaguely the same. There was he did Famous Monsters of Filmland. He did Vampirella. He had Creepy, Eerie, and there was something else, which I'm going to forget.
5.4 million. There you go.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No
but
joke.
the Eries, for me, I have my notes here. The Eries that I want, as I said, I prefer 7, which is this one. So we'll overhead this.
Yeah, that one sadly has a stamp on the middle of it. But
It has a stamp, but this one it's hard to keep a black comic in good shape.
Yeah.
This is pretty good.
What did I pay for it? The price is on it.
$18 at
Yeah,
Beguiling.
I can believe
But
it.
it's a beautiful piece. Absolutely gorgeous. This is one of those ones you want to see the actual painting.
And that's a wrap around, I want to say. The painting is very wide.
The real painting. I think it actually was done as well for a book
Doesn't wrap this.
cover, but that obviously doesn't wrap around. It's a magazine cover. I think it wraps the other way. Yeah, because I think the rest of the ocean is to her right, if I'm remembering correctly.
And here's 81, which is
Wow, that, by the way, that other one you just had was it record sales $1,100. That's a great one because of the theme. Like, what a great idea.
This is pretty funny.
Yeah,
It's sexist, of course.
Sure.
Time period.
Yeah.
If I would say this, if you get the joke, look what's in her hand. If you don't,
Yeah.
Kong in her hand.
Yeah.
It's a nice turnaround. Why does she have to be naked? I get it.
Well,
One of the
Kong was naked.
scariest things, yeah, that's true. One of the things about this, that of course she has no nipples, which is interesting.
That's almost like a classic Frazetta kind of thing in a scenario. I'm pretty sure they probably weren't allowed to have nipples on the front of the book.
But also she's got a very true to form, scary foot. Look at her foot gripping.
Yeah. It's gripping.
It's very creepy.
What number did you say that was?
I believe it's 32. 81 rather. 81.
Pull that. I'm just going to go to zoom to 81. I want to see what the rate is.
It has a very, like, he spent some time on that one foot, and the way it's gripping is ape-like. It's pretty creepy.
Oh, it's a raw estimated value of $30. I mean, it's a great find just because it is such a classic.
It's a good cover to buy.
It's a good Frazetta girl. What a great turnaround on the story. $40.
Now we have these creepies here.
Yeah, creepy.
And you can't go wrong. There are a few creepies that you want more than other creepies.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the creepies you want. Wolfman, werewolf.
Yep.
That is absolutely spectacular. This is also Warren Publishing again, obviously.
Yep.
I like 15. Do you have 15 in here?
15 is...
Oh, there's them.
Oh, yeah, there it is. 15 is the one.
There
that's
it is.
Yeah,
There it is.
I love the 15 for obviously the story, right?
Yeah, so you're going to tell the story. I'm just going to show it.
Yeah.
Get a little close in.
Yeah.
It's got beautiful texture, hasn't it?
It does have texture. See, this is the problem. I don't know if this is the one where again, I'm going to say it for the 17th time in this show. The legend goes, the story goes that Frank it was notoriously bad for not doing things far enough in advance. So he was late at night. The book cover was due the next day. He literally didn't have a canvas to paint on. So he went into one of the kids' rooms and pulled up a chunk of floorboard, and he had a piece of masonite. This is literally painted with, I would guess, maybe 1 or 2 tones of color. Like
very monocolor.
And if you look closely, the entire undertone of the whole thing is the masonite board. It's just wood chip pulp glued together. It's the entire.
So crazy.
It's so great. And then you see this, and I'm using this one as an example for that story only because it's so blatant. And then it does appear in other paintings. And then we were actually at when we were at the museum, I noticed it particularly in 1 or 2 paintings where you get up close and you go, it's all rendered, and then there's the side of a boat, but part of the boat is the masonite tone. You're just like, hey, just left that little spot blank to let this bleed through. But what an amazing example of his talent, using pretty much one or two colors of paint and a piece of masonite, and he tells such an amazing story.
I love 27.
Yeah, what a great
That's
piece.
so Conan vibe.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Thane.
yeah, and very Mongolian.
Yeah, it is very intense. And of course, I love this one. 32.
Yeah.
So Isaac, do you want to look up the values of some of these while we talk about why we love these so much?
Yeah, I mean, they're on average, they're like $30 at raw value, $10, $12, $30. I mean, some of the Frazetta covers are worth more than issue 1 in Creepy.
With good reason.
Yeah. And like you were saying, with this sort of the theme collecting, you can get Wolfman, Dracula, Wolfman versus Dracula.
Let's get the overhead,
monster.
Nick, and I'll go down through some of the ones that
Yeah.
Isaac has brought in here.
Yeah.
So we got this one we don't talk about. 9, beautiful. There's, of course, you got to have 4. 4 is one I've been looking for in nice shape. I like this. This is a nice monster. Number 10.
Yeah.
Number 7. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I forgot about this one. 5. That's right.
Yeah.
5 is great.
Yeah, and they're really on average, they're not expensive, and they're really, really great
11.
pieces. I mean, that's the thing about Frazetta that I love, is that you can get the art that he was doing was intended to be printed in this form. So it's the same as any other illustrative work, I suppose, but it's collecting these and putting them up is, to me, it's almost like putting up the painting. Obviously it'd be a lot nicer to put the real painting, but there it is.
It's buying something that's from late 60s, sometimes early 70s, something that is $30 or $40 that you can frame or put up and be very proud that you have it. It's tough to find in good shape often. Any one of these numbers, you want to get the Frazetta ones. I'm sure there are some other that are cool, but the Frazettas are particularly collectible because they're so awesome. The paintings themselves are stunning if you get a chance to go and see them. Why don't we we'll say 2 things. Why don't we put a little tidbit in, maybe a little later this week, show people what it was like at the museum. We were there with Frank Jr. and his wife Lori some years ago now. And we do have another special surprise. Isaac, we're going to have an interview with Sarah Frazetta from Frazetta Girls.
Nice.
Yes.
Bring it. Sarah Frazetta being Frank's granddaughter.
Frank's granddaughter, daughter Holly's daughter. And Holly and her daughter Sarah are running a business trying to get things collected together for people who have always wanted access with, merch or some, the most common thing that people had for years is you want a death dealer on a t-shirt, right? So
Sure.
there's some strategies around that. We do have a little death dealer thing we can talk about here if you want to just look real quick. Image came out with some Frazetta stuff, and
this was post-stroke. This
is
after,
post-stroke. He was practicing on this. So we're very lucky that we have these practicing the signature. But these you can get, these Image comics, we talked about them when we talked about Conan. You can get them for Covrprice, I believe, the whole run.
Yeah, and I think they did a graphic novel collection, because the idea was to basically take some of these Frazetta paintings that are almost standalone, just, they don't really necessarily have a story associated with them. And they're going, let's go, yes, they were done for specific books or what have you, but let's go deep in the lore of that specific painting and go, let's make up a story that goes there. Personally, I've read some of them. I wasn't a huge fan, but man, the bar is set so high on the cover, and you're trying to dig into making a story out of something that is so just itself as that painting.
If you're buying these, you may be buying them for the cover. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and what they're supposed to be for.
That's right. And they're not expensive to get. So again, you can go look for the Image, Google Frank Frazetta Image.
And I mean, a couple other things we can talk about.
Look at him. Here, something's happening over
I'm
there.
moving things around, you see. Is that, Heavy Metal Magazine. So you'd think Heavy Metal Magazine would be something that Frank would have been on. Now, these two issues here in front of me were put out, obviously long after he had passed away, which is sad because he really only appeared once on the cover of Heavy Metal during his lifetime. And Rand, you have that in front of you, actually.
I have it right here.
And it's the sequel to a very cool painting that we love, which is the Catgirl painting.
Come to my overhead there,
Yeah,
Nick, if
there you go.
would.
So that's the sequel to the Catgirl painting, not the one on the right. The one on the right there is National Lampoon.
This one here.
Yeah,
We'll
so
cover that up.
that Heavy Metal, I believe, was put out. What year is that one?
This is 90.
That's 90. Yeah,
Yep.
so he was still around. So that's, I think,
This is the one.
the one and only time that he showed up on the cover of Heavy Metal while he was still alive.
But this is a buy because there's an interview, right? You
That's
can
right,
see that
yeah.
at the top.
yeah,
This, and you can get this for how much? Do you know?
I'm just pulling it up. I, again, did not have it up. I
gotta
am
find
behind the
interview.
8 ball.
There it
here.
is.
Yeah. That, unfortunately.
Interview with Frazetta.
Yeah.
Always nice to read them.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was interviewed many times over the years, but what number is that one?
This is volume 14, number 5, Isaac. The numeration, the numbering of Heavy Metals, we are having some hard
Well,
times.
the thing
with
about
this.
Heavy Metals over the decades of that magazine's lifespan, they would switch between monthly to bi-monthly, and then they would do like specials and like, so it's an odd publication history to track. There's like something like 375 or 400 issues. We have all of them here. We can go through them.
But let's do it on camera.
Yeah, we should do it on camera right now. But I mean, the two covers that I have actually here, you know, once it was purchased, Heavy Metal was purchased more recently. You go to my overhead camera here. In recent years, these have come out. I can't seem to find a year on this one for some reason. 2017. This painting in particular,
Stunning.
This is only a portion of it. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. There's a fantastic big shape in the way that this is. And it's sort of, you know, it's obviously Satan, and there's just an amazing amount of an orgy of very sexual beings happening all the way down.
We know a story on
And
that.
there's a story around it is that Frank's wife, Ellie, did not want this painting in the studio. She thought that it was, you know, it could have had some bad things associated with it.
It's possible too that it was. Did we not hear that he was revising it quite a bit? That at one point it was more sexual.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and it is quite explicit if you dig into sections of it. But he's very, very careful in how that, because obviously it was a book cover originally, and that one, it was sitting on the easel at the museum when we went for that reason, because it wasn't hung up on the wall. It was the one that wasn't supposed to be. And obviously when they reprinted the Death Dealer on Heavy Metal, it's a great one. I just wanted to throw this in there real quick because this is just a funny thing I came across and don't know a tremendous amount about it, to be honest with you. But this is like sometime in the 90s when they decided to do this interesting fantasy collected book, but it was called Frank Frazetta Fantasy Illustrated. And it's like a collection of fantasy. There's Richard, there we go. ElfQuest is in here, Richard and Wendy Payne.
Wow.
There's just really interesting stuff. It's sort of like another version of a Heavy Metal. It's selling some Frank Frazetta statues. Oh, look, there's Richard Corbin's in here.
And I imagine you can get that for
This was like $10 or whatever. And I love this painting though. We're gonna go further into the weeds with the paintings here briefly, but you know, obviously Frank was known for all these book cover paintings. But you remember this, Fran, when we were in the museum?
I do.
And I don't want to take it away from. I won't say the answer to the question, but because anybody who goes to the museum, I think, is asked the same question: what is wrong with the painting? Something might be missing in the logic of the painting.
It's a snowmobile.
It's a snowmobile for one thing. Yeah.
We won't tell them what it is.
We won't tell them the answer. We'll let it be.
It'd be hard to drive, put it that way.
Yeah, but that's a good way to put it.
This idea that we're out there buying comic books that represent what is probably, he is the greatest artist in fantasy.
Yeah.
He influences people like Neil Adams, who become some of the greatest comic artists of their times, during the same time that Frank is working. What is it? Do you think that, why didn't he stay in comics? Was it because the movie posters and the money? Was it that he looked down on the medium? Is there any way to speculate how it didn't work out?
I mean, I think that also, you pointed out the fact that comics wasn't in a great place yet. And in some of that era that he's working in, he did go. Obviously, he was ghosting for Al Cap. He did. I want to say it's like a Johnny Comet or something. He did that sort of strip on his own. He did some other kind of kiddie stuff. He did want to tell stories with illustration, but I don't know if it would be a personal like obviously you could tell he loves what he's doing on that canvas on the Masonite board. And I don't know whether it's just a personal preference that once he got there, because obviously the business just took him that direction, and he had many different options in his life. He was a very, very good baseball player and could have gone pro. And you're kind of going, yeah, that option, or he could have gone this way. And for whatever reason, he just landed in this world of doing these paintings that for a long time were kind of, the art elite put up their noses at anything that was illustrated. For books, for hire. So, but obviously, he was a late great master, if not a reincarnated one.
It's true, and I think maybe the point is in comic books, some of the skill set that he had. Yeah. Right. He could easily have done that work.
That's right.
But it was something that didn't hit him the same place as the big painting vibe. Like the stuff that he did in the paintings was more about a painting. It was more impactful as a painting. Yeah. And to go and do the sequential art, maybe that just wasn't what he was into at some point and thought, I can do these big paintings. And he seemed to have an interest in Hollywood and movies as well, right? We know that.
Well, exactly. I mean, the thing that's, and without going too deep into the paintings themselves, that what he was able to do in storytelling in a single image, is almost unrivaled in other artists and their ability to just compact this feeling. And yet, if you really break it down, it's actually kind of rough and simple and rough around the edges. It's not super refined, much like a Boris Vallejo, which comes around like a little bit later.
Boris is more mannered.
He gets much more detailed.
Yes.
He's refining every single element. But there's something gut level, ethereal, whatever you want to throw at it in terms of descriptive words that just hit people, somewhere in the feels with what he was doing in painted art.
It's muscular, it's sensual, like it's powerful. The fact that you can get comic books that give you access to what would be great master work. Yeah. By the way, there are a lot of comic artists like this. He was of a time and place that, particularly talented, particularly influential. When we go to talk about other artists, we can see that they've benefited from coming after him potentially and looking at his work. And Frank has fans to this day collecting his material as best they can. Some of it is very expensive, as we know. But the ideas, some of the things that make him what he was aren't known to younger collectors sometimes, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, it's funny because so many people we've interviewed over the decades would say in many, many different fields, Frank is this, that is their inspiration. But yet sometimes, you would find yourself trying to explain to somebody who and why is Frank important. And you're like, wait a minute, so in a way, he deserves to be way more in the forefront of pop culture, history of pop culture illustration in general.
And I think, again, lots of people would say he already is. He's beloved and well known. But I wonder if there's a group of people, particularly in comics, who don't really have the same interaction with his work in the way that maybe we're hoping they do, especially if they see this. And we went through quickly. We spent less time with Covrprice today. We spent more time wanting to talk about it and pull things out and show examples. And I have to say, you have a lot of beautiful stuff here, so you must be feeling very happy to have it.
Yeah, and I mean, we were talking about this before we recorded that we can push this podcast into different collecting fields, toys, games, different things. And one of the big collections that Rand and I both share are the soft cover books and some hardcover books that he was well known for. And I'd love to get down into that history, because then you can really break down, and obviously Covrprice doesn't get into that, but you can really look at what he would like when it really was working, and sometimes it wasn't working the best. But
idea,
yeah, exactly.
Isaac, maybe we should have we have the key issue, the definitive podcast. Why don't we have another definitive podcast where we look at other pop culture stuff that we like? We're acting like this is preset, but it's not. We should do this.
We should just do this and toys. You know, we
I
got
know
lots of
you
that.
have a passion for toys.
It'd be really hard to do cars, like real cars. You know, if we collected cars.
You know, ironically, one of the producers right now, Nick, is a car guy. He would probably love that. But I think, we could look at movies that we think are important. We could look at even music, because as filmmakers, we have to always be, I'm hitting the mic, we have to draw in so much material. We sort of have to be cognizant of the different media that we pull together. So if people assume we've done a lot of research and studies for our documentaries, maybe we could enlist some of that material and keep the kind of, hey, what about this? Hey, look at this. Hey, look at that. Like Brian Froud maybe doesn't get the love.
Exactly.
We could start to talk about different artists. Anyway, listen, we have to wind this up. I'm making new hand gestures. Yeah. Isaac, what are you going to do as a hand gesture for the end of the show?
I'll continue with this moving thing. You're going that way. I'll go this way.
Okay, so let's say that we are convincing people that Covrprice.com is where you go to check your comics worth. You can set up your wish list, which we have obviously loaded with Frazettas today. Go get those Frazettas if you see them out there. And if you do see them out there, why don't you send us a little email and let us know where you went and what you got? I'm curious.
Oh, should we reveal any secrets? There's a really good place for books down in Las Vegas, of all places.
Don't tell them about that place. We'll be down there again someday when this is all, the COVID is done. So we're going to stop now. I'm Randall.
I'm Isaac Elliott-Fisher.
Brought to you by our friends at Covrprice, Covrprice.com. And special thanks to them for hosting some of these shows now. Please reach out to us. Let us know what you'd like to see moving forward. Thank you and have a great week.